I want to follow up a lot on what Senator Tester was talking about. No big surprise there, Megan. But obviously continue to be very, very concerned about rural postal delivery. And just want to give you some statistics. And I want to thank you all for once again appearing. Run into several of my colleagues as I was rushing back here saying we're working on postal reform, and this has been an issue that so many people have spent so many hours on, and I think both Jim and Dave, you basically nailed it. There isn't any idea out there that we haven't vetted, that we haven't, figured out, that we've left behind. There's no magic bullet. We just have to do the work that a board of directors should do for an entity that runs very much like a business. And certainly, I think there's been a lot of effort on this committee, not successful. I mean, let's be honest. As I watched in my location here in D.C., the mail being delivered at Christmas time with U-Hauls, and we even saw it in North Dakota. We know that we've got some issues that we've got to confront as it relates to mail delivery. And I certainly share the sentiment that once we start telling someone we are not going to deliver the mail at the end of the mile, then we're not the United States Post Office. We aren't meeting our constitutional obligation. And so my focus a lot has been a lot on what this means for rural America. And so I want to kind of give you some statistics just so that you understand what Senator Tester is talking about in terms of the prominence and importance of mail delivery in rural America. The Inspector General of the United States Postal Service released a report in April of 2015 about the variance in originating first-class mail single-piece volume declines throughout the United States. From 1995 to 2013, the originating first-class mail volume in North Dakota only decreased by 37%. That's the lowest rate of volume decline of any state in the country. It's significantly lower than the 61% national average first-class mail volume decline for the same period. And I want to point out that other rural states such as South Dakota, Montana, and Vermont, if you want to know where you haven't seen this same rapid rate of decline, it's in rural states. It's in rural communities. So that just impresses upon people how important rural delivery is. And we recently, and I don't know, Megan, I'm sure your staff's briefed you about a situation that we have in Fargo. It's a subdivision. Senator. It's a subdivision in Fargo, basically, but it's rural delivery. And we've talked several times about this, about the contracting for rural postal carriers and the difficulty that we have when old deliverers basically are edged out monetarily by somebody who wants the contract and what happens. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in this neighborhood in South Fargo. The residents recently formed a Facebook group. Everybody in the subdivision's on this Facebook group. You know why? So they can swap mail, because the mail isn't getting delivered to the right P.O. box. Now think about the time of year that we're in and what's being delivered. Senator Tester has explained that the safest way to protect your personal data and your information is U.S. Postal Service, right? So what's being delivered to your neighbors right now? Your W-2s, right? Confidential information, 1099s, tax data and information that contains some of the most private information other than your medical information, your financial information. And when we followed up on this, and Postmaster in Fargo is busy working on this, but when we followed up on this, we asked, what's the training for somebody who gets a new contract? And they said 24 hours. 24 hours to try and figure out how to deliver the mail. And I don't mean to, say that this one incident proves the point of what's happening in rural delivery. But and I know from the portal we opened up called Fix My Mail, that this is not an isolated circumstance. It's unique because it's rural Fargo, as opposed to, the Dunn County or one of the more rural counties. So how are we going to kind of reestablish that trust and faith, Postmaster General, in rural delivery when in rural America, they just think that they've lost a whole lot of quality in the delivery of postal services.
Senator Heitkamp, we're committed to rural America, and I personally am. And in terms of training, that's an investment in our employees, and that's something that we have addressed this year.
Well, they're not really your employees, though. They're your contractors, right?
But they represent the Postal Service.
They sure do.
So we need to train, whether it's a contract employee or a career postal employee. They need to be trained. In terms of improvements in rural America, we've been working to establish hubs, entry points specifically for our county newspapers, working with the National Newspaper Association. In many rural areas, we've adjusted transportation and also added additional capacity where needed. But please know, we are committed to rural America. And as you know, we're also looking to enhance service measurement, working with the regulator so that we can have more granular data and that we can identify these, if we have pinch points or any systemic issues, that we can address it quicker and ensure that we're providing that consistent, reliable service. That's our commitment.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that your words are heartfelt. I mean, we've had these conversations, and I've been grateful for all of the meetings and the work that we did on our rural postal bill, many provisions of which have been included in this bill. But service standards are not what they were. They just are not, and they're not acceptable. Even if the old days when I was a kid, and I think I've told you this story, where I challenged my law school classmates in Portland, Oregon, to send me a letter that said Heidi and the zip code. And I got that letter. I got their letters. I mean, they took up the challenge. And I got it in 2 days. That doesn't happen anymore. And so we recognize the challenges and the financial challenges, but I don't want this just to be about spreadsheets. I want this to be about service and about, once again, reestablishing, especially in rural communities, we desperately need to have a fair balance between cost-cutting and economy measures and continuing the mandate that we believe the founders of the Constitution, the writers of the Constitution gave us, which is to have a postal system that works for the entire country. And so just want to make sure that, and we'll have follow-on questions, Megan, and I know you're heartfelt, but we just don't see it in rural America. We don't see that concern being translated to improvement.
And I would say, Senator Heitkamp, that financial stability does support those service efforts. We are committed and look forward to continue to working with you on these issues.
Thank you. Going back to the statistics that I cited, Megan, can we just get a commitment that you actually will look at geographic needs in rural America, that we can get a greater sense of where meeting those needs fits within the post office priority?
Yes, Senator Heitkamp,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, and question for the Inspector General, Mr. Williams. Thank you for all your great work. And in your testimony, you state that the Postal Service survival is a tribute, and I'm sure the Postmaster General would agree with this, tribute to the men and women who work there. I have met with postal workers who are incredibly dedicated, walking in this kind of ice, delivering mail. This is hard, hard, hard work. And they do it every day because they love their customers and they love their route and they are so committed and dedicated. But we see morale going down and down and down. And I commissioned a report that you guys were very generous and provided some great data regarding challenges in the Bakken with overtime and taking a look at how we could continue to address the morale concerns. Are you currently working on any additional morale or workforce studies that really highlights some of the needs that we have to continue to recognize and appreciate the people who work at the Postal Office?
The proposed legislation, IPOST, contains a provision whereby we would conduct a comprehensive study. So we've begun the process of trying to imagine what that would be like and structuring for it. We're looking at that. Intuitively, you do worry. We're into the 6th or 7th year of postal workers being told that their performance is poor, that we're facing bankruptcy, insolvency. That has affected morale. I haven't counted it yet, but you can feel it. You can feel it everywhere. So I would say that we do have a problem. There are results coming out of a recent employee survey that the Postal Service conducted called Postal Pulse by the Gallup people. That'll be coming out. That'll tell us some. I do know that the Postal Service is struggling with that. They've created a program called Postal Proud, which is an effort to try to instill in the workers a sense of pride and to express to them a sense of appreciation and the importance of the mission. So
Not to belabor this point, but my husband, who is a family physician, takes care of a number of postal workers. He came home the other day and told me we were very bad employers. And I take that to heart. I mean, again, one story doesn't make the case, but certainly we know we have an issue. We included in the rural bill that I developed a morale component, but we need to find better ways to say thank you, and I want to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the extra.
If I may, Senator, I'm sorry, but
No, go ahead.
I think we were asked, when is the time to pass the legislation? In some ways, we're already beginning to see casualties from that legislation not having been passed. The vehicles that we're planning for the future are probably not exactly the vehicles we would have. The build down, which has caused some disruption, we hope temporarily, was partially caused because it had to be rushed. There wasn't enough money to have a coherent, gentle glide into that. And I would say morale. The time to pass legislation has passed, and we're beginning now to unscrew light bulbs from the tree.
Thanks so much, Senator Carper, Ranking Member Carper. This is absolutely essential to the rural economy, that we get this right. And I share your concern, Mr. Hutchinson, about what happens when my mother-in-law or grandma can't get your newspaper. That connects her to her community. And I think if you're from a rural state, there is no other way that you can look at this other than this is the lifeline. And so thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your political push on this. We have got to get this issue to be a higher priority in the halls of Congress. And so I really applaud you. Ms. Collins, I think that what we're going to see is a resurgence of mailers, actually. I think there's this idea that you can simply run an algorithm and know who your audience is. The surest way to know your audience is to mail directly to that audience, and you know who's on the other end of that. And so good luck as we approach the political season. Should be good for you as we see more and more targeting. And so, Fred, I want to talk a little bit about morale, a little bit about how grateful we are for the employees of the U.S. Postal Service. And I know, and you know, that I so much appreciate the postal union's hard work in trying to bring about the needed postal reforms. I don't think there's anyone who's a stakeholder who doesn't look at this and say, we cannot ignore this. We need to get something done. But we as stakeholders all need to have a voice in the challenges ahead. And so I'd say that the Postal Service has been working to come up with reforms, and certainly Senator Carper has been leading that effort, herding the cats, so to speak, making sure everybody's in the same page. But I want to, again, emphasize that we can't ignore the fourth stakeholder, which is the American customer, and improving service must be part of any postal reform package. And I want Fred to ask you, Can the rural senators have your continued commitment to work to incorporate those customers that you see every day, that your people have the connection with, make sure that they're represented at the table?
Absolutely, Senator. We're on the front lines with the customers. We hear about it. We hear about it every day. We know that our customers depend on us. We know that we depend on our customers. The Postal Service is the one secure method for our customers for delivery, for communication. It's the strength of the Postal Service. I guess it's the basis of our 83% approval rating. And of course, it's that trust and that service level is essential to the growth of the Postal Service as we continue to grow our current products and any future products. So absolutely, you have our commitment.
I think that maybe we forget how hard the work is. And anyone who, I think it would be really smart for every one of us to just walk along with the delivery folks or drive along with the delivery folks. And certainly a day like this reminds us of the commitment that your people have made and all of the employees of the Postal Service have made to continue to keep the American economy working.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's an honor for letter carriers to walk around and provide that service because, as you know, at the same time, they have the distinct opportunity on a daily basis because of where they are day in and day out to serve the American people in so many other ways, in terms of watching out for the elderly and stopping crimes and putting out fires and just all the other things that go along with knowing your community and knowing the families. And speaking to the morale, I just want to mention that's a big piece of what we need to do with the legislation. You've got a workforce that that knows they're the most trusted agency in the federal government. They know that we've lost 200,000 jobs and the productivity is an all-time high. Yet all they hear about in the media is how the Postal Service is going broke and is irrelevant, and how we have to, in the past, fight legislation where certain legislators and leadership of the Postal Service have bought into this strategy of attacking the networks and the service that we need to grow rather than addressing the elephant in the room. And it's really nice to see now that we've got some discussion, consensus going on addressing the real problem, the manufactured crisis, rather than attacking the networks. And that particular leadership of the Postal Service is no longer.
I think it was particularly rewarding when we look at what we would traditionally see as a bean counter, the IG recognizing the importance of that morale and recognizing the importance of maintaining the workforce and really expressing to us concern that we're almost too late given where we are. Finally, it's an issue and it for me. As you know, I am a strong advocate for six-day delivery and an even stronger advocate for service performance. And I guess for Fred, why is it so important that we have reliable delivery and service?
Well, again, it's the one secure method for delivery and communication. Our customers depend on that. They know it's secure. They know it's timely. They trust the person that's bringing the mail. You mentioned the 6-day. That's such an important part of the network. We can barely do it in 6 days. Can't imagine doing it in less. We need to expand our seven or 8 days.
And I want to make this point because I think that way too often the attitude is that 6-day is just a jobs program.
Right.
And I want to applaud you for your response, which really was immediately looking at what the customer's needs are. And so, I think that's an easy dodge for some people when they're talking about 6-day to say, oh, that's just, kind of people trying to protect their jobs. No, it's people trying to do their jobs and do what's best for American consumers. And so appreciate that perspective and really look forward to working with the customer groups and working with the postal unions as we move forward.
As do we. Thank you, Senator.